ladies and gentlemen and programmers out there, let us code the void loop. All right, let's see how to play. All right, let's see what we're talking about here. All right, let's go ahead and we're gonna go to the. Let's get this thing open. All right, so we're gonna go to the void loop over here. So let's get this up and running. Okay. So right here we've got our opening and closing curly braces ready. So that should be set up. So again, we're doing a new method. This is a special method. This is the game loop that runs over and over. In Greenfoot, it would be called the act method, but we're going to call it this one void loop, parentheses, parentheses. And again, we already have our curly brace. Okay, so this is the void loop is the game loop, or the act runs. It runs over and over and over and over again. Okay, so now what is the first thing we're going to do? We're going to say pop position equals analog read .A0. So you're going to come over here and you're going to go pop position equals analog read A0. So we're going to use the analog read to measure the position of the potentiometer, 0. Okay, so basically we have our variable called pop position, our little box in the RAM, and it was empty. And now what we're going to do is we're going to read the position of this blue. I can't do it backwards. It's impossible. Oh, there it is. So I can't do it. There it is. All right, so wherever I turn this thing, it's going to read that and stick that in the box, okay? And the potentiometer reads from 0. If you're all the way one way, it's going to read 0. If you're halfway, it's going to read 511. And if you're all the way over, it's going to be 1023. And just so you know, the A0 stands for analog 0. It's just basically you've got the wire connected to the 0 on the board, and it's analog, which means it's just reading the knob. Okay. Let me see if I have anything in the spiel about this. I don't know what that was. That was some sort of weird thing. All right. So here we go. Initializing the variable equals putting something into the box for the first time. So when we say pop position equals analog read IO, we use analog read. So analog read is a method call. So it's like, hey, analog read. And it's like, oh, I know how to do that. Which thing would you like to read? Oh, I want to read A0. So it reads it. And so the whole point of that method call is it gets that information, right? So we get it. What do we do with it? Well, then it's like, oh, we're going to throw it in here to the equals. We're going to throw it into the box. So it's going to read whatever is in there and throw it in the box. So in this case, I said it read 10. So we just turned it a little bit. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. So in this case, we're initializing an instance variable using a method call. How does the Arduino know how to map? How many parameters are needed for map? Well, what does 0 turn into? What would a 123 turn into? What would a 511 turn into? All right, so basically we're talking about servo position equals map. All right, so that's our next code we're going to type in. Let's see if we can find it over here. So we're going to come over here and we're going to select these little stars here, and we're going to say servo position equals map, parentheses, semicolon, and then so map is a method call, and we're going to say, hey, I want a map, and it's like, well, what numbers are we working with here? So you're going to say pop position. So pop position is the number we're going to get, and then we say comma, and it's like, well, what are we going to do with it? It's like, okay, well, the pop position has a range from 0 to 123, comma, 1,000, that should be a 0, 1,023. Okay, and then we're going to put a comma, Well, what are we going to map it to? What does a 0 turn into? Well, 0 turns into 20. And well, what does 1023 turn into? That turns in 160. Because the deal is this. So we have our little knob that we're turning, and then we have our little our servo that it controls, and this thing goes from 0 to 123. This thing goes from 20 to 160. So if you try to turn this thing to 1023, it would injure it, and if you try to turn it to 0, it would injure it. It only wants to go from it actually can go from 0 to 180, but it doesn't really want to go all the way to 180 because it's cheap. It's a cheap Chinese made part, right? And so we don't go all the way. We just go from 20 to 160, right? So we have to convert it. So one thing goes from 0 to 1023, the other goes from 20. So what do? We map it. So if the potentiometer, the little blue dial, is reading a 0, it turns it into a 20, and it's like, oh, okay, it goes over here. And if the potentiometer is reading a 1023, well, that's all the way, so that adjusts it to 160. Okay, well, what would happen if, so let's go back to the spiel. My little Arduino was making a weird noise, bothering me. Okay, so let's go to our little spiel and answer this question. Well, what would happen if it was a 1? Okay, well, 1 would turn into maybe a 21. What would a 511 be? Well, 511 is halfway here. So what's halfway between 20 and 160? Okay, so see if you can figure it out. But anyway, it's basically mapping it so that we can use one set of coordinates with another one, and it's going to work it and not break it. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, all right, write this down. By the way, how does an Arduino know how to map? Well, that's a method call. It's something that every Arduino it's built in, and it knows how to do. All right. Now we're going to do the next one, which is my servo. Right. Let's go ahead. So we're going to write this code, my servo. Okay, so we created this thing called my servo. Okay, and then we initialized it. Where did we initialize it? Oh, I guess I just kind of realized something. Sorry. Sorry, I'm just gonna. Should I tell you what I just figured out? I'll tell you. Okay, so here's what was confusing me, because I was thinking Java, and we're in. So right here, servo, my servo, that created the box called my servo, and it created a brand new servo object. So it actually declared it and initialized it all at once. Java doesn't work that way, so that's a little different. Anyway, sorry about that. That was a little side note. All right, I need to get moving here. This is taking way too long. Sorry. Okay, so when I say my servo, I'm talking to the box, and since I'm talking to the box, you have a reference to the my servo guy, and we're going to say dot write, and so he's like, I know how to do that. Like somebody wrote a whole class on how to build this robot, and this robot was given abilities to write, and so you're asking him to write, like sweet, and then you're going to say servo position. It's like, oh, okay, we just stuck a value in there. So like right here, we just said the potentiometer position equals, no, where's the map? Oh, here's the one I was looking for. So we said the servo position equals map. We just figured out, like we took the potentiometer thing, we figured out the new servo position, and now we're going to say, hey, my servo, he's like, what y'all want? And you're like, I want you to write. He's like, what do you want to write? He's like, I want you to write what's in this box. And so then he sends that information to the servo, and the servo turns. The interesting thing is, in this one line of code, we're dealing with an object in a variable, my servo, and then he's using a value in a variable and doing it. Where is the write method located, and how do you know? What's the dot called? If you don't know the answer to that, ask me. I'll tell you in class. All right. So that's it. It should, at this point, it should work. So give it a shot. Let me make sure we got everything. I think we got everything. Let's take a look at it and see. Um, oh, we didn't type it. We didn't type in the code. We didn't. We talked about that code. So we're going to do this code right here that we just talked about. Here is the myservo.write servo position. So we're going to find the potentiometer position and store it in a box. We're going to convert it using the mapping and stick the new value into the servo position, and then we're going to talk to our robot named myservo, and we're going to write it. Let's see. Let's go ahead and verify it. Make sure there's no issues here. What? Servo. Oh, oopsie! I did this wrong. This should be lowercase. I could either change this to uppercase or change this to lowercase, but typically that's the way we write variables. Let's try it again. All right, so this one should work. So plug it all in together, give it a shot, and see what happens. Thanks, guys. Go ahead and go on to the next video, which is going to be lesson 3B.